Χαίρετε και ευχαριστώ πολύ. Ευχαριστώ για την πρόσκληση και συγγνώμη για όλη την ταλαιπωρία την οποία υπέστημεν. Θα ξεκινήσω, θα μιλήσω πολύ συντομότερα από ό,τι είναι φτιαγμένο το PowerPoint, οπότε θα μιλάω περίπου στα slides. Next slide, please. The Hippocratic Oath is very surprisingly, sorry, you have to click, yeah, very good, click through it, click through the whole page. Βάλτε όλη την σελίδα. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ, με συγχωρείτε. Δεν είμαι έτοιμος γι' αυτό. Αυτό το οποίο μας εκπλήσει στον Ιπποκρατικό λόγο is that the oath is about values. If we want to define who is a successful mathematician, what we'll do is we'll talk about mathematics. When Hippocrates talks about a successful doctor, he talks about values, societal values, and that is surprising. Now, Hippocrates doesn't give us a theory about that, but Aristotle does, and he explains why that happens. Aristotle distinguishes anhenia from evoulia. So, intelligence, eustrophia, is different from evoulia. The difference is that intelligence, as he explains, next slide please, όπως εξηγεί as Aristotle explains, intelligence is interested at the product, it's a technique, it's a pieces, whereas η ευουλία leads to considerations of praxis, which is the contributive factor to the well-being of the city. So the difference between intelligence and evoulia is that the one does not consider values, whereas the other is all about values. As a consequence, somebody can be very, very good at producing health in medicine, but the profession of the medic, as Aristotle explains, is much more than that. It's defined by the contribution the medic makes to the well-being of the society, and therefore is defined by the values, and that's the role of the Hippocratic Oath. Now, the Hippocratic Oath has served us for 2,500 years in medicine, and doctors took that oath and practiced that oath to the best of their abilities. But now, for the first time, we are seeing that artificial intelligence enters medicine. Next slide, please. Now, already artificial intelligence serves medicine well. For example, with diagnosing patients, for end-to-end discovery and development, for improving communication between physician and patient, for transcribing medical documents such as prescriptions. Next slide, please. Importantly, for remote patient care, because AI has managed to take medicine where medicine did not exist before, where people need it the most because they're most deprived. Next slide, please. Now, a further area in which AI has contributed massively to medicine is through the activities of DeepMind. DeepMind is well known to us from it's a research lab of AI for Google, and they created the AlphaGo algorithm that beat Lisa Dow, the world champion of Go, in 2016. So everybody heard about that in the world. Now, currently, they've created the AlphaFold algorithm, which is for predicting 3D models of protein structures that have the potential to accelerate the research in every field of biology. Θα προσπαθήσω, you'll allow me now to play no, it won't work. I wanted to play the first 5 seconds of that slide, but that's okay. Okay. So next slide, please stay on this slide. Very good. Now, a further field in which AI has contributed to medicine is robotic surgery. And that has done total wonders because it allows the doctor to have much more control, to enter intricate configurations, complexity, and to do that with the help of precision instruments. And that is very much currently in use. Next slide, please. So, how did AI achieve all these things? It has achieved them through a methodology that has been developed in AI called deep learning. Deep learning is a method of organizing computers in the way that they are, the human mind is organized, and the idea is to for the computer to detect and identify patterns in huge amount of data, and then classify them, find similarities and classify phenomena according to these patterns. This is the way that we have known since Aristotle. Aristotle introduced this methodology. It's called classification, and he developed it in his categories. And all the sciences have developed, have followed this classification method of genera and species, and now we implement it in computers. Now, the difference between computers and us is that the computer can scan humongously more data than the human mind can, and therefore can detect connections where we cannot. And there is where AI can be more successful than we can. Next slide, please. Now, there's a tremendous similarity in the way that we operate and the way that the computer operates with deep learning, and that makes it very optimal. Only that, first, it requires a huge amount of data, and that's very difficult to find often. Secondly, it requires long training processes of the algorithm, and thirdly, is very expensive. Next slide, please. Enter contextual AI. Now, most of us will not have heard of contextual AI. It is the next phase. It has not come yet. It's coming. It's the next phase of AI. And the difference is that with contextual AI, the programmer tries to offer to AI something that we people have. For example, if I ask you, how's grandma? You know exactly what I'm talking about, and you will answer the question because of context, contextual information. Now, that contextual information the computer usually does not have, but they started adding it, the who, the why, the when, and the what of human decisions and interactions, and that has made a huge difference to the training period and the amount of data that's needed for training a particular algorithm. And that makes a difference to money, and that makes it extremely desirable. So, next slide, please. We are entering a new business model, the contextual business. And it's defined as the chemical mix of data, emotions, machines with AI and people. Instead of considering these factors exclusively, one should use them collectively to build a great company. So that's a new business model using AI, not with deep learning, but deep learning plus contextual AI. And that gives us the contextual business. And now, since you are all medical doctors, let me make a prediction. You will remember in the future that you heard it here first. You will enter contextual medicine. That doesn't exist yet, but I predict it. Contextual medicine will happen, and it will be used widely throughout the world in medicine. Now, contextual medicine is the collective mix of data, emotions, AI, and people. Next slide, please. I will now start closing my argument. It's complex. There are many arguments here. I'll try to summarize to give you the essence. Contextual AI brings in all the factors that are relevant to the medical situation of a patient. So contextual AI is holistic. And that's an advantage because it will give a much more informed diagnosis for the patient. Now, because it's holistic and it touches on every aspect of the human nature and activity, it will require what is already in development, what is called artificial general intelligence. And sometimes we refer to it as superintelligence. The difference there is theoretical. Artificial general intelligence is a challenge. And I'll try to show why. Although the results of AI have been fantastic so far, the next step towards the contextual medicine that I'm predicting and towards the use of artificial AI, general AI in medicine is going to be problematic for the following reason. Next slide, please. We need to distinguish between intelligence and rationality. That follows from the Anchinia and Evoulia of Aristotle. Intelligence, which is what artificial intelligence is good at, is independent of values. Rationality, namely the tool, the logical tool with which we operate as human beings to make decisions, I should respect my parents, I should do this in society, I should do that in my work, etc. Rationality is based on values. This is a phenomenal difference. Intelligence finds solutions independently of values. Rationality depends on values. And contextual AI as well as the artificial general AI will require values. Why? Because it will try to do, artificial general intelligence, what human beings can do. And what human beings can do depends on the understanding that human beings have, the decisions that human beings take, and the actions that human beings conduct. So to do all that, which is based in humans on values, we have to feed values into the computer, and that is a challenge. First, a theoretical challenge set by Aristotle. Aristotle showed, and next slide please. I'll come to the Aristotle thing in a moment. The challenge of putting values, human values in the algorithms has occupied the best minds in the best universities in the world. I'll discuss special centers for the future of humanity at Oxford, Berkeley, and MIT. Nick Bostrom is the director of Oxford, the Future of Humanity Institute, where he thinks that the move we need to make is to find the initial conditions that will determine he says that at some point superintelligence might escape into the world and we might face it and be affronted by it. To prevent that, we need to set the initial conditions of developing superintelligence in such a way so that any development of it will be serving human values. I don't think that's untenable. I will not give the argument for that now, but I wanted to mention it. Stuart Russell at Berkeley says that we have the alignment problem. We have to align the human values with algorithmic values. And the best way to do that, he proposes, is to always have to ask, always to need to ask superintelligence, or rather, superintelligence, the algorithm, should always ask humans whether they approve the solution or not. And I think that's not going to work out when artificial general intelligence and superintelligence is going to be smarter than us. Let me just point out that artificial intelligence is going to get smarter than us, not for any other reason, but because intelligence sells. The companies that are producing artificial intelligence will sell more of it if they make it smarter than us. End of conversation. They will do it. There's nothing stopping them. And the consequence of that is that it doesn't make sense for us to have to approve the diagnoses and decisions that superintelligence has derived on the basis of an intelligence superior to us. So I don't think Stuart Russell's solution will work. The next slide, please. Now, third is Max Tegmark, who is an astrophysicist at MIT, and he created the Future of Life Institute at MIT, and he says that there's only one thing that will save us. He says there's a wisdom race. We have to feed wisdom into AI. Otherwise, AI will devastate us. And there's a race to it because the companies are developing artificial intelligence purely as intelligence, not as rationality. We, on the other hand, need to somehow enter the scene and introduce restrictions that will impose our values on AI, and that's a race. If we lose that race, humanity loses for good. Okay, that's a very quick survey. Let me come to my final conclusion. Wisdom, I repeat, wisdom is something that we Greeks know a lot about. We discovered wisdom here in this land, in Greece, and we are called upon now to play a role in it, because even physicists, even engineers at MIT realize that the wisdom race is the next race with artificial intelligence, especially as artificial intelligence enters holistic approaches to medicine. Next slide, please. Let me parenthetically say that I think that the problem is not going to be the values that we'll introduce into artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, there's going to be a problem that we'll face before then, a very serious problem, and that is that there's a tremendous amount of rhetoric on the part of the companies that produce AI as to what AI is capable of. There is misunderstanding of AI. This misunderstanding of AI, not only of the people who understand nothing of it, but even of the engineers who design AI. Let me mention it's not on this page, the Google engineer that just a few weeks ago mentioned that he thought that the algorithm that he had created is sentient, that he had consciousness, said it in, he was sincere. He said it in total amazement. But the point is that it made no sense. A philosopher could tell him exactly why it made no sense, and I will not go into that now. And that sort of misunderstanding, that sort of AI rhetoric, that rhetoric can do that. Adobe has created tremendous rhetoric too, we'll come to it in a moment, about what AI can understand. AI can stand by our side. AI can collaborate with us. All these things require values, and all these things the companies claim AI can do, and as a matter of fact, AI is far away from doing, precisely because of the reason that Aristotle showed, and the reason is that values are not reducible to rules. Aristotle showed that. Aristotle was a phenomenal philosopher who showed us that we need to develop virtues, dispositions towards the good, because we cannot reduce the good to rule following. And if we cannot reduce to rule following, we cannot reduce it to mathematics, which is what the algorithm understands. Therefore, the rhetoric about putting values into AI is going to be the number one danger for the future, because people will believe it. Because people who do not understand AI will believe it, and therefore the companies will sell the product, and something that does not understand our values will run our lives. Next slide, please. This is some of the rhetoric of Adobe. I will not go into it. Next slide, please. So the argument is that we need to implant values in AI. We cannot implant values in AI in principle, and therefore we have to be careful, because AI producers assume, believe, and certainly say that AI can do what we can, namely make decisions as we can, which is absolutely with no base whatsoever, because they cannot understand values, and therefore AI can become dangerous because we misuse it. Next slide, please. So I'm proposing that along with Max Tegmark, I propose that we need wisdom. We need a body that will perform two functions. The first function is to be vigilant and explain to people what wisdom AI can do and what AI cannot do, especially when contextual AI develops within medicine. And the second is to participate in the race that the MIT physicists talked about, the race for wisdom, to find ways to implant restrictions in AI so that AI does not rule us on the basis of non-existent values at the time that it will be deciding things about us. Let me parenthetically talk about this deciding part, just to show you how dangerous things are, especially for medicine. In China, they've developed now a new app which is called the Health app, right? Η app της υγείας. And they are using this app to advise people, especially in relation to COVID, what to do and what not to do. And as it turned out, they started using this app to advise people not to go to demonstrations and not to demonstrate. Red would flash out, etc. Why? On the pretext of health, but basically in order to control people, what they do and what they demonstrate against the government for. So there's a tremendous overlap in the decision domain of society, and just as there's overlap, we talk about guns being there to safeguard people's ability to defend themselves, and at the same time we give them the guns and they go and they kill other people. So there's tremendous overlap between rights and abuses, and exactly the same thing will happen with AI, and therefore we have to be vigilant. We have to show concern, to explain to people, to show people what AI can do, and most importantly, what AI cannot do, even though others claim that it can do it. In short, we need to democratize AI wisdom, a very Greek activity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think that has been an amazing talk, overviewing all the AI ethical issues. And we need to speed up a bit because we are behind our schedule. And I would ask